The sky burned red as smoke rolled across the Pride Lands. The wind, once a gentle whisper carrying the scent of acacia and sun-baked earth, now carried the acrid smell of fire and fear. Beneath the roar of the inferno, a low, menacing growl crept closer, a promise of danger that made the very air vibrate. Simba stood at the edge of a collapsing ridge, his young paws pressed into cracked, hot stone. Tu's eyes, wide with a mixture of terror and awe, scanned the chaos unfolding below him. This wasn't a game. This wasn't one of his father's controlled lessons on the plains. This was survival, raw and immediate. The world he knew was being consumed by a monstrous, living blaze. From the shifting curtains of smoke, a figure emerged, not with panic, but with an almost impossible calm. It was Mufasa, powerful, regal, his presence a stark contrast to the destruction surrounding them. The flames licked at the ground near his paws. His magnificent mane caught the hellish light, making it seem like living fire, a crown of gold and crimson. He moved to Simba's side, a solid, unshakable anchor in a world turned to ash. "Stay close." Mufasa's voice was a low rumble, steady and grounding, cutting through the crackle of the blaze and the pounding in Simba's own chest. Fire tests more than strength, Simba. It tests judgment. The very earth shook as a section of the ridge further down gave way, sending a cascade of burning debris crashing into the gorge below. A roar that seemed to swallow all other noise. Their path of retreat was gone, cut off by a chasm of fire and falling rock. Simba's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure panic. He wanted to run, to flee anywhere, but there was nowhere to go. He squeezed his eyes shut for a second, then forced them open, forcing himself to breathe, to mimic the calm, deep breaths of his father. This wasn't a lesson from a distance anymore. This was the lesson itself, happening right now, with his life as the passing grade. Together, father and son began to move through the inferno. Every step was deliberate, a calculated dance with death. They navigated through glowing embers and fallen, smoldering trees. Every glance between them was a silent exchange, a current of trust and instruction flowing from father to son. Mufasa would dip his head, indicating a safer path. Simba would follow without hesitation. But he kept his focus on Mufasa, on the rhythm of his father's movement. As the fiery wave receded slightly, Mufasa guided them through a newly opened gap. Simba nodded, a profound understanding dawning in his young mind. Courage wasn't about charging forward blindly. It was about knowing when to stand your ground and when to move with purpose. They continued their descent, the landscape around them a twisted nightmare of black and orange. The familiar shapes of the Pride Lands were gone, replaced by skeletal trees and glowing ground. Simba's paws ached from the heat, and his lungs burned with every breath. He was exhausted, every muscle trembling with adrenaline and effort. He stumbled, his leg catching on a smoldering root. For a moment, His courage faltered. The sheer scale of the disaster, the overwhelming power of the fire, threatened to crush his spirit. He looked up at his father, his eyes pleading. Mufasa paused and looked back, not with disappointment, but with empathy. He didn't offer empty words of encouragement. A collapsing patch of groundage was met with Mufasa's calm assessment and decisive action, with Simba observing, learning, and participating. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the edge of the fire line. The air, though still thick with smoke, began to carry a hint of clean, cool night. Simba collapsed, his body finally surrendering to the exhaustion he had been holding at bay. He lay there, panting, gazing back at the fiery devastation they had just escaped. The Pride Lands, his home, was a canvas of destruction, a wound on the face of the savannah. But they were alive. They had survived. Mufasa lay down beside him, his massive head resting on his paws. He was silent for a long time, watching the flames dance in the distance. The fire was no longer an immediate threat, but a somber, flickering spectacle. Simba looked at his father, at the soot smudged on his golden fur, the weariness in his eyes. He had seen his father's strength many times, but today he had seen something more. He had seen wisdom in action, courage tempered with patience, and love expressed not in words, but in unwavering protection. "The fire will pass," Mufasa finally said, his voice soft. "The rains will come, and the land will heal. What is burned away will grow back, stronger." Heat turned his head to look directly at Simba. "Remember this, my son. The scars will remain, but they're a reminder of what we endured and what we learned. A king's true power is not in his roar, but in his ability to lead his pride through the fire and into the dawn." Simba looked at the scorched land, then back at his father. He understood. The lesson wasn't about the fire. The fire was just the classroom. The lesson was about the heart of a king, a heart that had to be forged in the flames of adversity. In the shadow of the smoldering Pride Lands, a cub's fear had been burned away, leaving behind the first glimmers of a future king's courage. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more tallies from the heart of the wild. 2. The forest fire was a roaring monster. Flames licking the sky and turning the night into a terrifying, blistering orange. The very ground beneath their paws began to crumble, splitting open to reveal a deep, dark ravine. Hot sparks rained down on them, a deadly shower that looked deceptively like falling stars. 2. Then, with a sound that ripped through the air, a massive, burning tree crashed down right in front of them, completely blocking their escape. Simba jumped back, his heart pounding, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. For the first time, a flicker of raw fear, of pure doubt, crossed his young face. He wasn't sure they were going to make it. Mufasa saw it instantly. Start, and turned to his son. "Look at me," he commanded, his voice a firm anchor in the chaos. Simba, trembling, lifted his head and met his father's steady gaze. "You are not alone," Mufasa said. While his father used his immense strength, Simba became his eyes and ears. He watched the crumbling cliffs and the burning branches above, shouting warnings of falling embers and shifting ground. Suddenly, the ridge they were scrambling across gave way. The earth disappeared from under Simba's paws. Without a single moment of hesitation, Mufasa lunged. He dug his own powerful claws deep into the unstable rock, anchoring himself as his muscles strained against the weight and the pull of gravity. With a tremendous effort that spoke of a father's love, he hauled Simba back up, pulling him from the edge of the chasm onto solid ground. For a long moment, they both just lay there, side by side, their chests heaving as they gasped for air. Tyre still raged around them, but in that small space, they had found a pocket of safety. Mufasa nudged his son, pressing his forehead gently against Simba's. "Remember this," he said, his voice soft but filled with an unshakable truth. "A king's strength, a leader's survival, it doesn't come from standing above others. It comes from holding on to them, from pulling them up with you." But stronger than the fear was the feeling of his father's strength, the memory of being pulled back from the brink. Simba thought about this. He had always seen his father as fearless, a king who stood above all challenges. But now he saw something different, something deeper. He saw a leader whose strength wasn't just in his roar or his claws, but in his heart. It was a strength born of connection, of responsibility, of love. As dawn broke, painting the smoke-filled sky with shades of gray and pink, they walked out of the cave. The landscape was devastated, a blackened ruin of what was once a lush, green valley. It was a heartbreaking sight, but as the sun climbed higher, a gentle rain began to fall, washing the ash from the leaves of the few surviving trees and promising a new beginning. Mufasa placed a paw on Simba's shoulder. "Look," he said, "the land is scarred, but it will heal. The rains will come, the seeds will sprout, and life will return. The circle of life is much stronger than any fire. And so are we, when we stand together." Years later, when Simba was king, he would often return to that scarred ridge. He would look down into the ravine and remember the smoke, the fear, and the feeling of his father's unwavering grip. He ruled not with the arrogance of a king who believed himself invincible, but with the wisdom of one who knew his greatest strength lay in the paws and hearts of those he led. You remembered that true royalty isn't about the crown you wear, but about the community you build and the family you hold close. He taught his own children that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it, especially for the sake of others. And he would always tell them the story of the fire, of the fall, and of the lesson learned in the heart of the flames, that we survive not by standing apart, but by holding on to each other. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more tales of courage and leadership. And share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay strong and hold on to your pride. As night fell, the vast savannah, once a tapestry of life, was transformed into something otherworldly, something terrifying. Aya had swept through, leaving behind a glowing battlefield of shadows and flickering flame. The air, thick with the scent of ash and fear, hung heavy over the land. It was a landscape of charcoal and embers, where the familiar contours of home had been erased and replaced by a stark alien beauty. The danger, however, was far from over. The fire was a destructive force, but it was a predictable one. What came after, in the deep, suffocating darkness, was not. From the swirling shadows, a new sound began to emerge. It was the sound of movement, stealthy, deliberate, and full of purpose. These were the sounds of hungry, desperate predators, creatures of the night drawn out from their hiding places by the chaos of the fire. The flames had scattered their usual prey, disoriented their rivals, and created a new, brutal hierarchy of survival. They saw the lingering glow, not as a warning, but as a dinner bell, a signal that the weak and the wounded would be easy to find. For the survivors huddled together, the real test was just beginning. Simba, his young heart still racing from the inferno, stiffened. Every muscle in his body went tense, his ears swiveling to catch every whisper of sound carried on the smoky breeze. The rustle of a charred leaf, the snap of a twig under a heavy peach noise was a potential threat, a harbinger of doom. His eyes, wide and reflecting the distant orange glow, darted into the darkness, trying to pierce the veil of night. The fear that had gripped him during the fire was now replaced by a different kind, a more primal and immediate dread. This was not the raw elemental fury of nature. This was the calculated threat of a hunter. Mufasa, who had been a stoic anchor throughout the ordeal, rose slowly. He didn't make a sound, his powerful form materializing from the ground like a mountain taking shape in the gloom. Bruised, with a deliberate, unhurried grace, he moved to place himself just slightly ahead of the group, a solid wall of muscle and resolve between his family and the unseen dangers of the night. He was the king, the protector, and in that moment, his presence was a reassurance more powerful than any roar. He wasn't just standing guard, he was a living shield. He turned his great head, his eyes finding Simba's in the darkness. "Now you lead," Mufasa said, his voice a low rumble, not a command, but a transfer of trust. Simba's eyes widened in disbelief. Him led. Atu. After everything that had happened, the world felt like it was crumbling, and his father was asking him to build a path through the ruins. Panic flared in his chest, a cold wave washing over him. How could he possibly lead them out of this? He was just a cub, still trembling from the heat of the flames. He looked at his father, searching for a sign, a hint that this was some kind of test, some cruel lesson. But Mufasa's gaze was steady, filled not with expectation, but with an unshakable faith. "Trust what you've learned," Mufasa continued, his voice softer now, cutting through Simba's rising fear. "Trust your instincts. It wasn't about knowing the way. It was about feeling the way." Mufasa was reminding him that all the lessons, all the days spent exploring the Pride Lands, all the moments of listening to the whispers of the wind and the rhythm of the earth, had prepared him for this, too. It was a profound moment of empowerment, a passing of the torch, not in a time of triumph, but in the depths of crisis. Simba took a deep breath, the acrid air filling his lungs. He closed his eyes for a moment, shutting out the terrifying sight of the scorched earth and the oppressive darkness. He forced himself to listen, not with his ears alone, but with his whole being. He listened to the wind as it sighed through the skeletal remains of acacia trees. He'll listen to the ground beneath his paws, feeling the faint vibrations of the world around him. He listened for the rhythm of life, that persistent, stubborn beat that still thrummed beneath the surface of all this destruction. In the heart of the devastation, life was not gone. It was just quieter, more hidden. And as he listened, a path began to form in his mind. Not a clear road, but a feeling, a pull in a certain direction. He saw it, a narrow pass between two towering scorched rock formations. With a tight squeeze, a route the larger, more aggressive predators might overlook in their search for open ground. It was a gamble, but it felt right. It felt like the land itself was offering them a secret way out. With a newfound sense of purpose, Simba took a step, then another, guiding them towards the shadowy gap. He was no longer just following, he was leading. They moved as one, a silent procession through the land of ash. The heat from the ground rose in shimmering waves, and the air was still choked with smoke, but they moved with a shared resolve. It was a dance of survival, a testament to their bond. The predators, expecting a panicked and scattered group, hesitated. They had come for an easy meal, for the chaos and fear that usually followed a disaster. What they found instead was a fortress. They saw a father and son, a king and his heir, standing shoulder to shoulder, a unit that could not be broken. They sensed a quiet, unyielding strength, a unity they could not hope to overcome. Their charge faltered, their confidence waned. With frustrated yelps and snarled warnings, they began to back away, melting back into the shadows from which they came. Defeated not by brute force, but by an unbreakable bond. Mufasa watched them go, his breathing steady, his powerful form radiating calm. He then turned his gaze to Simba, who stood panting, adrenaline still coursing through him. The king's eyes were not filled with relief, but with a deep, quiet pride that seemed to illuminate the darkness around them, too. It was a look that said more than any words of praise ever could. It was a look of acknowledgement, of respect. "The fire didn't break you," Mufasa said, his voice resonating with a father's love and a monarch's approval. "It forged you." And in that moment, under the starless, smoke-filled sky, Simba, finally, truly understood. The weight of his father's words settled over him, not as a burden, but as a profound truth. He had been so focused on strength, on power, on the idea of being a king who could command the elements and overpower fate. But he was wrong. Survival wasn't about brute force. It wasn't about overpowering the fire or dominating the predators. It was about adapting. It was about listening. It was about knowing when to lead and when to stand together. It was about protecting what matters most and enduring, not as individuals, but as one. The fire hadn't been the end, but Hedman, the beginning of his true education as a king. As the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, a soft rain began to fall. Its gentle hiss, a stark contrast to the roar of the fire that had just ravaged the land. It whispered against the dying flames, a soothing balm on a wounded earth. Slowly, as the smoke thinned, the Pride Lands began to emerge, scarred and blackened, but undeniably alive. At the edge of the devastation, on the highest ridge of Pride Rock, two figures stood silhouetted against the grey morning sky. Thick, kind that settles in your bones after a long, terrifying night. But in his eyes, a newfound clarity burned brighter than any flame. The fear was still there, a faint tremor beneath the surface, but it was accompanied by something else, no understanding. He took a shaky breath, the air still thick with the smell of smoke and rain. I was afraid. Simba admitted, his voice quiet, almost lost in the sound of the storm. It was a confession he'd been holding back, a weight on his chest. To admit fear felt like admitting weakness, especially in front of the strongest lion he knew. Mufasa didn't look at him immediately. He kept his gaze on the recovering lands below, a gentle, knowing smile touching his lips. He turned his head, his magnificent mane damp with rain, and his amber eyes met Simba's. "Fear is not weakness, my son," he replied, his voice a low, comforting rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very rock beneath their paws. "Fear means you understand what can be lost. It means you understand the value of what you are fighting for. That is why you will protect it, because you know the pain of almost losing it." The storm intensified for a moment, the rain coming down harder, washing the clinging ash from their fur, cleansing them. And then, as if on cue, the sun broke through the heavy clouds. The single, powerful beam of golden light cut through the gloom, illuminating the scene below. It painted the wet savanna in strokes of gold and orange, transforming the blackened landscape into something almost beautiful, a canvas of survival. In that singular, breathtaking moment, something shifted inside Simba. Feeling of being a small, uncertain cub, always walking in the shadow of a colossal legend, began to dissolve. The weight of his father's legacy no longer felt like a burden he could never carry, but a foundation upon which he could build. He looked at the vast kingdom stretching before him, at his father standing beside him, and for the first time, he didn't just see a prince following a king, he felt like a king in the making. He felt the stirrings of the same strength, the same responsibility, the same love for this land that he saw in his father's eyes. The fire had taken so much. It had scorched the earth, terrified the animals, and pushed them all to the brink. But as Simba stood there, watching the sunrise, he realized it had also given something back. A lesson written in the language of flame and survival. It was a lesson about courage, not as the absence of fear, but as the will to act in spite of it. And it was a lesson about the unbreakable bond between a father and a son. A bond tested by fire and strengthened by shared struggle. This wasn't just about fighting a fire, it was about facing a fear that had lived inside him for so long, the fear of not being enough, of not being his father. The flames had burned away that illusion. He saw now that he wasn't meant to be a copy of Mufasa, who was meant to be Simba, a king who had known fear, who had faced loss, and who would rule with a wisdom earned through fire. Mufasa placed a heavy paw on Simba's shoulder, a gesture of both comfort and passing the torch. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a transfer of knowledge that no words could ever fully capture. They had faced the disaster not just as king and prince, but as a team. They had leaned on each other, their strengths complementing their weaknesses. As they turned and began to walk forward together, side by side, their paws leaving the first new tracks on the damp, ashen ground, the Pride Lands bore silent witness to a truth older than fire itself, a truth woven into the very circle of life. Legends. And not born in isolation. They are not solitary figures who stand alone against the storm. They are forged in community, in family, in shared sacrifice. Legends don't survive alone. They are carried on the shoulders of those they love, and their legacy lives on in the hearts of those they inspire. The path ahead was long. Simba walked with a new sense of purpose. If this story resonated with you and you love exploring the deeper themes within our favorite tailies, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a new video. We have so many more stories to share. Until next time, stay strong and remember the lessons hidden in the stories we love.